Okay, come on. Let's go YouTube. You can do it. There we go. All right. Well, I gotta watch this video. Yes, generative AI. And there we go. Now I've got that finally working. And there we go. Hope you folks are having a good morning, afternoon, evening, happy time of day to you, wherever you might be. Let's see here. This is my favorite aspect of the hobby. Kit bashing provides such a wide range of possibilities when you truly have the bits to express your creative mind and storytelling. Very good point. Exactly. There, Nix. Too bad I won't be watching this one live. Well, you know, when you catch it later. So, I hope you're doing well. Afternoon from Scotland, out getting coffee. Hello from Italy, trying to survive the heat wave. Huh? Good morning from not quite as sweltering Philadelphia. Yeah, it's cool here, but it's humid. It's gone back to humid again. So that's, you know, but it will get a bit warmer today, but not crazy, hopefully. Let's see here. Morning from Jonesboro, Illinois, getting ready to make coffee and some eggs for breakfast. Sounds lovely. I have some coffee right here, and I did not have eggs. I instead had, I don't know, little breakfast biscuit things. Those Belvita things, I like those. The orange cranberry are lovely. Let's see here. John Ashley Smith, how you doing? Other Dave, how you doing? Cornflakes Hobby Desk, good morning from Syracuse, New York. Painting up some AdMax, Space Marines, and Necrons this morning while I wait for the Dota 2 Riadia Masters Grand Finals to start. That sounds like video games is what that is. I think that's Dota 2's video games. I'm 99% sure. I've never played. I mean, I've played video games, but not Dota. So there's that. Let's see here. Checking in from De Pere. How you doing, Xpaxis? Fungazi, how you doing? Good morning from lovely Washington, D.C. Lovely is better than very hot, I think. I think it was very hot recently. Working a second squad at Casterkin. Nice. Good morning from Rhode Island. I've been really enjoying Death Wizards. Well, nice. Glad to hear it. Gotten 2 friends to play so far, and they love it. Thanks to you and Vince for making such a great game. Well, that's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Perfect timing. I'm on my way home from my dad's wedding. Well, congratulations to your dad. This will make the journey home a lot less boring. Nice. Unless you're driving. Well, you can listen if you're driving. That's fine, probably. Let's see here. Looking at a bunch of purchases from Historicon yesterday and pondering where to start first. Nice. Going from cloudy Mexico City, currently gathering the paints for a kit bash project of Gene Stealer Squad. Nice. Cooking breakfast and about to every other Sunday my way through the morning. Nice. Good morning from Texas. I'll be working on some forest goblins today. Very cool. Very cool. What's the difference between a forest goblin and like a regular goblin? Do they more pine bows like tied to their heads and stuff like that for camouflage? Or is it, it's, so I've heard of like, you know, night goblins and, you know, cave goblins and all that stuff, but forest goblins, I don't know. I don't think I've come across that before. Good afternoon from Kent, England. Good morning from coastal North Carolina. Morning from Tennessee. Putting finishing touches on a Tyranid combat patrol. Might start Turnip 28 Army next. Nice. I haven't got a chance to look at it yet, but I saw the post. I'm a Patreon supporter of Turnip 28, and the first public, like, playtest rules, I guess, for Swill, which is the new game, which is, it's in the Turnip 28 universe, the Turnip 28 cinematic universe, but it is more skirmishy. And so that is finally dropped for Patreon folks. So I'm looking forward. I'm probably going to try to download it later today. Looking forward to watching this. Nice. BF Bulldog, how you doing? Hello from Edinburgh, Scotland. How you doing, Alexander? I wasn't that late, was I? I don't think I was late. Morning from Townsville. How you doing? Ears are still ringing from Sammy Hagar concert. Wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know he was out still streaming. I didn't know he was out still streaming. I mean, touring. There you go. Death Wizard is never late. Insert quote here. There you go. VJ Morph, how you doing? Oh, everything moved. Perfectly on time. Well, probably not that either necessarily, but I have noticed as I've gotten older, I'm much more interested in being prompt. I'm very annoyed if I'm late to something. Whereas when I was in my 20s, I was late to everything, like all the time. But as I've gotten older, I'm very annoyed by tardiness. Predominantly myself, but also in others as well. Good morning from steamy Corpus Christi, Texas. I mean, summers are pretty steamy down there most of the time anyway, right? Good morning, everyone. Working on Drukhari Kill Team and fighting the urge to buy Old World's dwarfs. Is it dwarfs or dwarves? Love the Old World fantasy battle aesthetic. Nice. I'm not a square-based guy, number one. And this is related, I'm sure. I'm also not into rank and flank. But there's a small part of me that wants to buy some of those old skeletons that are old enough to drink and build and paint them just for fun. I don't know. I'd put them on round bases though, so you know that's me being bad. Let's see here. Good morning from Amarillo, Texas. Good morning from Iowa. Nutley, New Jersey. Very warm West Midlands. Morning from a pleasant Milwaukee, now writing of too many politicians. That's pretty, yeah. I understand that. Morning from West Virginia. Good morning from Pittsburgh. Hope the day is treating everyone well. Got a stomach bug, so get to catch the Sunday show. Oh well, I mean, it's good to get to catch the Sunday show, but it's bad that you got a stomach bug. Those are no fun. Antonio, how you doing? Good morning from cloudy Milwaukee. Yeah, it's kind of cloudy here too, which is fine. Hello from Connecticut. Good morning from Andarko. It was confusing for a minute. I was watching another stream and suddenly Uncle Adam is on left flank vets. I don't think I am, but you know. I still got plenty of rats and folks in silver and gold armor to build. The rats are the most interesting though. Yeah, I'm working on the Skaven from Skaven Tide as well. Just the spearhead. I'm not doing all of the Skaven. I'm just doing the spearhead, which is there's the main HQ guy who has a real name. It's like he's like a Claw Lord on Gnaw Beast or some junk like that. I don't know. It's a big rat on rat horse, as far as I can tell. So he's built and primed and zenithalled. Then there's the 3 rat ogres who are also large. They are also built and primed and zenithalled. Then there is the Grey Seer who is finished. There is I did him on Twitch. There's the engineer who is 2/3 finished, maybe a little bit more, maybe 3/4. And then there's 20 clan rats, of which 14 are finished and 6 are in progress. So at the very least, everything's built and everything's primed and zenithalled. Some stuff is done, other stuff is waiting to be done. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to paint the rat ogres and the big boss man on Twitch or not. I haven't decided yet. I painted most of the clan rats not on Twitch, but I did make a video about it, which you can see on YouTube. So yeah. And then I might make a video about how to paint the Storm Bros as far as that goes, how to quick and easy do that as well. But I'm not going to do the whole spearhead or whatever. So. Let's see here. What else have we got going on? Morning from Louisiana. Human is all get out. That also seems to be kind of a thing, usually. Good morning from the heat-blasted wastes formerly known as Spokane. Okay. Usually doesn't get super crazy hot up there. Excuse me. Apologize. Pacific Northwest in general, but it's been happening more and more a lot lately, it seems. Probably will continue to do so. Let's see here. Howdy from sunny southern Sweden. That's fun to say. Miss the old days when you could order individual bits from GW? Yeah, I don't think I ever did, but I was aware of the fact that you could. I remember I'm old enough that I used to go to when I would go to Gen Con when it was still in Milwaukee, towards the end of like Gen Con's reign in Milwaukee, Games Workshop stopped going because that was at that time probably fourth and fifth, mostly fifth edition. They were very hands off on the community. They didn't want to talk to the community. They were just like, no, I think we're good. So they weren't going to conventions and things like that and all that kind of stuff. But previous to that, before they left Gen Con, in Milwaukee, I distinctly remember walking into their booth and they had these huge boards set up with bits like glued to them with numbers next to them, and then you could go and say, I want 12 of number 17 and I want 2 of number 45, and then like give them a thing, and then either they would mail it to you or they had the bits there in big buckets or something like that, and they would just go, here you go. But I do remember seeing that at the time, and at the time I was not like super into, like I was into gaming. I was going to obviously to Gen Con, and very frequently at that point in the early days, like I started going, like my first Gen Con was in 92, and I went there to demo the game that we had made, my friend Peter and I, back when it was a company called Snarling Badger Games. Now is me and Vince, and it's Snarling Badger Studios, totally different. That being said, it's still the same URL. Part of the reason why Vince and I had decided to use Snarling Badger Studios was because I already had snarlingbadger.com, like, and I've had that same URL, which means I've had the same email address since late 1995. So it's nearly 30 years. It'll be coming up 30 years next year in December of me having that domain. But anyway, yeah, so I wasn't necessarily into wargaming particularly hard. I was doing some BattleTech and stuff like that at that time, but I wasn't into Warhammer particularly. I thought it was interesting, and I was reading some of the stuff and whatever, and we were playing Space Hulk, but that was about it. At the time, I was just like, I don't have the money for an army style game like that, and I just was like, that's not a thing. Which, you know, I'm sure that's still a big, huge problem. I mean, the prices are much higher now, I'll tell you that. If you can, the benefit is to be able to go to places like, for Kitbashing specifically, is to go to places like either Adepticon, and I think Gen Con, they might be there too, but there's a guy that's just known as the Bits guy, and he owns a shop, I think, in Toledo, Ohio, and he goes to conventions. I've seen him at Origins as well, and he just has these tubs, just giant tubs, like these big plastic tubs, and each one will have a label on it. It'll say like Tau, Space Wolves, you know, orcs, whatever, and then you just open up the tub, and it's just filled with little Ziploc bags, and maybe it'll be like 2 shoulder pads, or it'll be like, I don't know, a Tau drone, or like this or that, and then prices are written on every single one of those little bags, and you just paw through it looking for the thing you're looking for, understanding that probably hundreds of people have sneezed into that tub. So you may want to use a little bit of hand sanitizer afterwards, but you know, otherwise probably fine. It's probably fine. But yeah, that's how you get that, in eBay, or pretty much how you seem to get bits these days. Let me see here. Hope everyone is well. I agree, VJ Morph. Afternoon from next to Hadrian's Wall. Kitbashing is the sport of kings. I like it a lot. Someone in the comments of on Facebook, when I posted last night that this was going to be the show today, someone in the comments, my friend Eric, who also lives down in Milwaukee, he said he wanted to know like what, like, is, if you just change like a single arm, is that still kit bashing? I would say it's a degree. I would say it's a degree of kit bashing. I don't know that there's a like, this is kit bashing and this is not, like, you know, hard line. I think it's more of a situation of like, I don't know, sometimes it's a state of mind, you know, sometimes just a simple head swap. Very frequently, a simple head swap can really make some changes. I mean, hang on, picture here. I don't think anything in here is just a simple head swap. I think that some of them are more than others, but there's definitely more than just a head swap. But a head swap by itself can certainly be, it's step one at the very least, you know. Sometimes you just do a head swap and things work out cool, and then later on you do a head swap and be change a weapon, and you do some, there's all kinds of things like that. Let's see. Good morning from Rhode Island, where I'm finishing up my Lord Solar Serpentor Kitbash. Nice. Afternoon, young man from Glasgow. Weather is dodo as per usual. Hey, Rex. Rex saw a bird, which is why he's being noisy. You guys can't quite see him, though. Here, Rex, come over here. He never listens. Let's see here. Morning from Clearwater, Florida. In the Netherlands, converting up Custodes champion to an old man Custodes, a la Pete the Wargamer. Cool. Let's see here. Morning from Florida. How you doing? Good day from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. That's how you say that, by the way. Being a person who's lived in Wisconsin his entire life, that word, which is all O's and C's and W's and what, it's Oconomowoc. Working on Scatter Terrain today. One of your older videos inspired me. Nice. Scatter Terrain is also a lot of fun. I feel Scatter Terrain and Kitbashing are two places where you can get like really creative. Like terrain is pretty creative in general anyway, but sometimes you can just get, for some reason, Scatter Terrain and Kitbashing can sometimes scratch the same itch, and I think it's because of the size. Like when you're Kitbashing, the model is relatively small, and when you're doing Scatter Terrain, that has a tendency to be kind of small too. Whereas a building, like a terrain building, whether it's a castle or a sci-fi lab or whatever, those things are generally a little bit bigger and different. But morning from Colorado, how you doing? Morning from Omaha, just finished a bunch of urban catacomb bases for my Custodes squads. Death Guard bits minus the organic parts make great bits of rubble. Death Guard bits minus the organic parts make weird. No kidding. Huh. That's interesting. He's really happy about that bird. I've been buying boxes of figures to reach that critical mass for my vision of a kit-bashed force. Yeah, that's the thing too, is that I will buy boxes sometimes. Like, I don't play Necromunda, but I own a lot of Necromunda models because they make great kit bashing. Either the basis of a kit bash or the parts that you add to other stuff for kit bashes. If you were thinking about getting into kit bashing and you're looking for sci-fi to start, I would tell you to start with Stargrave. You know, the Stargrave lines of models from North Star Military Figures. They've got a bunch of plastic models. Mercenaries, crew, troopers, scavengers now. I would tell you to start there because you can do a lot of work just with those things, but then also integrating in any GW kit stuff you might have. But I would also then tell you to take a look at, again, if you're talking about sci-fi, a lot of Necromunda kits are also spectacular for that too. So you buy yourself a couple of Stargrave boxes and maybe a Necromunda box, and you would have parts for days and be able to do all kinds of neat things. Good morning from Boston. Got Spearhead primed up, ready to paint. Nice. Getting into the spirit by kitbashing my free Warlord Games Napoleonics from Wargames Illustrated with Wargames Atlantic accessories. There'll be a bodyguard for my skirmish game Big Bads. Nice. That's the thing too, is sometimes you get like free miniatures for reasons. You know, they just show up. It's part of you know, like you buy some magazine and you get a free sprue, or you pick up a free sprue at a convention or something like that. And so yeah, you can kind of have some fun things like that. Good morning from unsufferably hot Utah, painting up some Skaven tide. It's, like I said, it's not bad here at all. It is humid, but we still have all the windows open so that little fuzzy people like Rex over here can yell at birds out the window. But when it gets warm enough, then we are going to close up the windows and turn on the AC again. Marvel United Multiverse Pledge arrived last week. I see a lot of painting chibis in my future. I suppose so, yeah. Feathers and leaves make a well-dressed forest goblin. Makes sense, sure. Western Australia, how you doing? Let's see. I think it's dwarfs. I don't look at that. That's Tim Conway. Warhammer Forest Goblins wear feathers and ride spiders. Oh. Any word on new Turnip 28 minis? I must have been too busy to keep up. I know that they're working on, I think that you can already buy Turnip 28 STLs if you've got a 3D printer or a friend with a 3D printer. Hoping my green stuff rollers come in today so I can get started on my Stormcast half for the Skaven Tide League. Nice. I've used them before. I've not used them much. I kind of have these sort of specific ways I like to do my bases, but I have picked up some of those rollers just for that, to try them out and stuff like that. I once kitbashed Harlequin, Drakari, Eldar troops with a blended metallic Turbo Dork paint scheme. It was better in my head, but I learned so much. I mean, that's the important thing. Good morning from Ottawa, hanging out in a cafe because the LRT work crew across the street started up at 6:30 this morning. Oof, that's no fun. Morning from Hamilton, Ontario. Trying to work on some playtest unit cards for my Game Combat Tales. Any recommendations for free layout software for cards and books? I don't use Adobe. I can't think of any free layout software myself, but if you want to buy layout software that is not expensive and is also not a subscription, take a look at a company called Affinity, which I think is spelled AFFINITY. Affinity Publisher is their layout software, and it's, I don't know, last time I looked, it's like $75, but that's it. It's the $75. It's not $75 a month. It's not $75 a year. It's just $75. I can tell you that as a person who has been doing layout and things like that for games that are getting published, we're publishing through Wargame Vault, aka Drive Through RPG, the overall company that controls all of that is a company called One Bookshelf. Close, but not quite. One Bookshelf. Anyway, in the back end where they're like, look, here's a bunch of documents and like knowledge, files about how to do, lay out your stuff in Adobe InDesign so that it works with our system. And then the other half of it is, here's how to lay that stuff out in Affinity Publisher. So the two main pieces of software that at least a company like Wargame Vault that they support are InDesign from Adobe and Affinity Publisher. So I would take a look at that. It's not free, but it's, let's see. I still have some black powder minis I need to be painting, but I just got a 3D printer. Oh, yeah. On the fence about bringing blackout to the store. Really going to get pushed into it. Yeah, I don't know. I like blackout a lot. Right here, I've got this is the third force that I'll be working on. If you follow me on Instagram, I posted pictures of the two forces, the Manticore and the Harlow forces, that I finished. I painted them up astoundingly quickly because they're military or pseudo-military looking, and everything's the same color when you're military. It's just like, what was this, tan? Or slightly more tan? That's basically it. So, yeah, I've been enjoying those guys, and they paint up really, really quickly, which is nice. Yeah, I don't know how well, I don't know if they do wholesale. They must, I'm assuming, but I know they're not probably available through distribution at this point. But I know you guys have carried Steel Rift, and I'm pretty sure that Death Ray Designs is doing the manufacturing for Blackout, but I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So I don't know. There's probably a way to do it, but I was going to say you might not want to go too deep on it, obviously, but then again, maybe again, deep might be like 2 of these for each group. These things run about $60, I think, plus shipping or whatever. That's the retail. So yeah, it's a good question. I guess it depends also on like what people in the local area are interested in. So, which, being a store owner, that, but yeah, I like the game. I've been enjoying it, and it's super fun to paint too. So, sunny Sussex, UK. It's prime time to time and paint minis. Probably prime, but yes, I don't feel tardy. Hot wishes from a super sunny Bavaria. I'm 33 now and already hate people being altered to things. I don't know what that means. After some shows I saw in the 80s, I couldn't hear high frequency sounds for a week. Oh, yeah, yeah. Early is on time, and on time is late, and late is unacceptable. I remember Citadel originally called squats space dwarves. Yeah, probably. But the lore doesn't change, though, you know. Old World seemed to have arrived with a boom and then disappear. AOS new release probably the reason. I think it's honestly it's just the way GW works. It's always about the new. It's always about new. What's new this week? What's new this week? And as soon as it's not this week and it's not new anymore, they don't really seem to pay super close attention to it. You might get a token article once in a while in Warhammer community website, which has been getting weird kind of lately. I don't know. But yeah, it's I would say that it's that their only focus is on what's new. They don't focus on things that they've already made. Like a lot of stores that I talk to are just like, yeah, I can't get this, I can't get this, I can't get this. Stuff that are staples for people's army. You know, you want to get into the hobby and build yourself a 2,000 point army. So you buy the new thing that came out that drew you to it. And you're like, cool. And then you're like, now I need these and these and these. And they're like, yeah, we don't have that. Maybe later, you know. That's a real that'll definitely kill your vibe. You know what I mean? Morning from New Jersey. 95% of my built minis are kit bashes, so used in sci-fi and fantasy miniature agnostic games. That's the other thing too that I think is the most interesting to me specifically. I don't do a ton of kit bashing anymore for Games Workshop games. I used to when I was first getting into playing Chaos after Tau. I was really into really you know, the reason I moved from Tau to Chaos was because Chaos seemed like it was going to be more interesting to kit bash. Tau didn't really seem like it was something you know, it didn't seem like it had a kit bashy vibe to it. You can kit bash anything if you believe in yourself, but Chaos really made sense. Just like with Orcs and Chaos are the two, I think, easiest to kit bash armies. It just makes sense. So, because you just be like, I'm going to put a weird arm on this guy, and it's like, well, he's Chaos. It's fine. And if you're an orc, you'd be like, I'm going to put an extra arm on this guy. And you're like, well, he probably found it. It's fine. But yeah, it's nowadays when I'm doing stuff for 40K, I have a tendency to just be like, oh, I'm just going to do the way it looks. I think it's because when I do stuff for miniature agnostic games, I care a little bit more about them, which is why I want to take the time. But also, I also want to take a look at it from the aspect of like you said, I can use this model in multiple games. And sure, you can use 40K models or, you know, Age of Sigmar models in multiple games. I'm right now using, I'm working on a bunch of ghosts for Death Wizards because I've got a Spirit Caller Necromancer, and so my entire force is going to be ghosts. And most of them are Night Haunts, which makes sense. They are what they say on the tin. I'm just speed painting them in a very interesting way, which is incredibly easy and still looks really nice. So I'm going to be making a video about that too. Let's see here. Kit bashing a dog pen for our pack of 10 monsters. 85 degrees outside at 9 a.m. Going to be fun. Glad I have the Every Other Sunday show to listen to. Well, I'm glad you're able to listen as well. And, you know, I hope that the dogs don't get too warm out there. Used to love kit bashing, but ended up more bit caching after selling up. I don't know what that is. The People's Uncle. I don't know if that's the case. I'm backing Bad Squiddo Games' new mini Kickstarter, My Last Sunrise 2, Women of Horror. 28mm minis for tabletop minis. Mind if I give a shout out to Annie? Well, I mean, you sort of did, but Annie's good people. If you like very interesting miniatures with it's predominantly mostly all women, but also she's got really cool like neat terrain bits and stuff like that I've bought from her as well. Yeah, definitely check out Bad Squiddo Games. You can find it on Google, I'm assuming. Excuse me. Good evening from southern Sweden. How you doing? Love that the tradition has become checking in with weather reports. I mean, it's, you know, very, very appreciated your tourism video. It's creating some great chat on other servers. I mean, it's creating a lot of chat, that's for sure. Yeah, yeah. Just got the Skaven Tide box yesterday. Wish me luck. Absolutely. Cat woke me up and I just saw the alert. I mean, you know, cats are smart. Well, Rex lately has been waking us up really early for reasons that we don't understand. Like, he wakes us up and he makes all these noises that make him, and I know I'm anthropomorphizing here, but it makes him sound concerned. Like, he sounds concerned and like, I don't know, it's really weird. And he's just like running around the bedroom and he's hopping up on the bed and he's getting up on top of my dresser and he's just like a menace. And it's like 5:30 in the morning. And you're like, cut it out. And there, he when we first got him, he was doing that a bunch, but he was also basically a kitten. They said he was 3 years old, but the vet was like, no, he's like less than 1 at this point. We're like, great. So now he's got to be 1.5, and you would think he would start to calm down, but yeah, it depends. For a while, I thought that like overnight when we'd have all the windows closed because the air conditioning would be on and stuff like that, that then he wouldn't have like windows to look out at and squeak at birds and do all that kind of stuff. And then that would, you know, when the windows are closed, then he would just take a nap and then he would get up early because he's like, well, I've been sleeping all night. But yeah, the last several nights we've had the windows open and he still is waking up early and coming in and bugging us. And so I don't know. The rest of the cats come in, but they just come in and like lay down by us or whatever. But he is just jumping from front, like he jumped on my crotch, like off the top rope. Last week, I was like laying there on my back, and then he jumped directly onto my crotch. It's not cool. From the dresser. Not great. Not great. He is definitely, he's not employee of the month. Let's just say that. Let's see. Please do a Storm Bros video. That armor seems daunting. Silver and gold are hard for me. How much shading and highlighting can you do? The trick is to not bother, I find. Like, especially with the, I mean, you know, maybe on the HQ troops you can do that, but otherwise, no. If you were going to do gold, I'll tell you right now, the color you want is, it's an Army Painter Speed Paint Metallic, and it's called Glittering Loot. And so paint your Storm Bros, like prime them like black or dark brown, preferably like a dark brown if you want a little bit of a warmer kind of thing. And then just use a big brush and just put on Glittering Loot speed paint, and it works amazing. It is. I did a video about how to paint gold. It's got a big purple one-page rules lizard guy on it. It's from probably maybe 6 months ago, maybe a little bit less. But yeah, I would check that too. But like I said, I'm still thinking about making that video. I would actually have to build some of the Storm Bros, which I haven't done yet. Let's see here. Hello and good morning from Mitten State, Michigan. How you doing? High in Spokane is 106 today. Oh, good Lord. That's not good. It's got to be that heat dome thing that they keep talking about, right? Do you ever kit bash vehicles? How would you consider it for an indie rule set? Well, okay, I was going to say I don't play any indie rule sets that have vehicles that I can think of. I mean, one-page rules. But, I mean, technically Flames of War is those are vehicles, they're mechs, but it's not quite the same thing. I think you're talking more like 28mm transports, you know, a Chimera, a Rhino, things like that. But yeah, I haven't done a lot of kit bashing on vehicles, I guess. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I've seen some people do really cool stuff where they'll just like take some weird pieces of trash out of the garbage and turn it into a cool, like a speeder bike or something like that, you know, or whatever. Or they take the classic, whatever, the deodorant, you know, tube thing or whatever, and turn it into like a hover tank and stuff. I'm old enough that I used to buy Ralph Partha minis in GW Hammersmith. Nice. We're from Denver, printing terrain for Necromunda and building a space frog. Ooh, space frog sounds fun. I mean, the Necromunda terrain sounds pretty cool too. Where's the Snarling Badger GeoCities? We didn't have a GeoCities. I've been a web nerd for a long time. Like, it was my job. Like, web designer was my job for like 25 years, give or take. So in 95, well, did we start the website in 95? Yeah, we must have, right around there. So I hand built the original website. It was like all, you know, hand coded and stuff like that, because that's how you used to do things. So if you didn't do GeoCities back then. But yeah, so if you go in the Wayback Machine, you'll find some shockingly probably not good, but still it worked stuff. I mean, we weren't selling the game online at the time. We were mainly just like letting people know about it, and then we were selling it at conventions and selling it. Did we ever? I don't think we ever sold BattleBots through distribution, but our second game that we did, which was called Zombie Rally, we did sell through distribution, and then eventually we started selling Zombie Rally as a PDF, even though it was a card game. But you could just print the cards and put them in sleeves if you wanted to. So that's what people did. Red Jack, how you doing? A shoebox of ancient Ralpartha stuff, all lead. Do not lick. That's what I would tell you to say. Good morning from Smoky, Saskatchewan. How you doing? As the internet goes, 30 years is ancient. Yeah. Toledo Game Room, indeed. Yep, Toledo Game Room. That the Bits guy. That's his main. That's his store. Since I like the look of Old World, but will never play Rank and Flank, I may keep some on square bases and get around converters. Is that kit bashing? If you want it to be. Like, I'm not here to tell you what is and what isn't. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to, yeah, I don't know that, like, I'll definitely say that if you built it exactly the way that they told you to in the instructions and you didn't change anything at all and everything, then it's probably not kit bashing. But everything else, let's say, can be. Why not? I'm not super into handing out labels too much. I'd be so disappointed to open up a tub and only find a couple of shoulder pads. Talk about a 2-bit outfit. Ooh, nice. I mean, it was more than that, but yes. Tub crud, yes. Well, yes. Sneezed into tubs. Sweet bits for... I mean, you definitely stay away from the Nurgle, the Nurgle tub for sure. Head swap or even just a repose is bashing in my book. Sure. It was hard getting into the chat today. The gatekeepers told me I was a hobby tourist, but I showed them my passport and they let me in. Well, that's good to hear. I've moved on to 3D printing, and all my kit bashing these days is done digitally. Excuse me, digitally. I really enjoy it. I can make just about whatever I want. That is a thing I haven't done. The concept basically is that you're going to 3D print a specific thing. You know, you bought some STL or you found it on Thingiverse or whatever, and then you either take apart from another model. Again, this is all in the computer. This is all in cyberspace. And so you're like, you know, I like this guy, but that head's got to go. So then in the software, if you're good at the software, you can just take the head, just get rid of it, and then take the head from this model and put it on there, position it where you want. And then when you 3D print, it's kit bashing. It's digital kit bashing when we call that. I don't know. But I've got no problem with that. Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm not the type to say, look, if you don't, get glue stuck to your fingers, it's not kit bashing. If you do it digitally and then just print it out and go to town, also kit bashing in my opinion. Kit bashing is an intimidating prospect for me because it feels like I have to stand by my creative choices in the same way I do with original paint schemes. I mean, I guess it depends on who's bugging you about it. You know what I mean? Like if you're just like, I enjoy this because it's cool and you like the way it looks. One of the things to do with kit bashing that I've found over the years is to use a little bit of poster putty, because then you can take a bit and then put it on there and like look at it and go, but you haven't committed yet. You haven't glued and said, yes, this has got to be like this and now it's like that. Instead, you can kind of put it on there and like kind of look at it from different angles and be like, is that what I want? Is that what I'm looking for? And so if you're concerned about that type of thing and whether it's your, creative output or whatever, standing by your creative choices, then it's fine. It's fine. Love a chatty cat. Most of the cats here, when they see birds outside, make a lot of noises. Except for George. George doesn't so much. George is very quiet for being a moose. He is a unit. Get that bird. It's clearly up to no good. I mean, birds. Are they even real? I don't know. Rex doesn't seem to be as keen to be on camera as Brent's cat. No, he's not. Well, none of them are. Like, right now, the angle is, like, if they go into this window, you can tell over here, you can't really see that window. Sometimes Margot will sleep in this basket on top of this cart, and I can move it around a little bit, and you can see her a little bit. But if they're in the window from where this camera is, then it doesn't work out. If I'm on like the regular webcam that's built into the monitor, then it's a bit wider and you can see if there's a cat in the window. There's currently no cat in the window. My Death Wizard's Necromancer is made from 4 different North Star plastic kits. Love how interchangeable those sets are. If you were, yeah, I should get back to that. Before, when I was talking about how to get into kit bashing, I was talking about for sci-fi. If you want to get into it for fantasy, I would definitely start with, instead of Stargrave, I would start with Frostgrave. Again, same company, North Star Military Figures. They make a whole bunch of different plastic kits that are for Frostgrave, but they also make plastic kits for Oathmark. And there's another one. I can't think of the other one. But the other company to take a look at too, besides North Star, is also Wargames Atlantic. I have there's 2 boxes of Wargames Atlantic stuff over there. There's some classic fantasy skeleton cavalry and some foot soldier guys, like knights. And they can be great too. And you can always mix. You can always be like, here, this guy's got like he's got like a knight helmet and a knight chest plate, but then he's got weird sci-fi legs and a machine gun. Like that's all fine too, you know? I mean, honestly, like, again, going back to these guys, over on the left, that guy has Genestealer cultist legs. He has new Imperial Guard torso and arms and the weapons, and then the head is from Wargames Atlantic, from their I can't remember what they're called, but they basically are like people in jumpsuits, you know what I mean, like coveralls. I can't remember the name of the kit exactly, but that's where that head comes from. Guy second from the left, he is old school Space Marine Scout legs. He is Genestealer Cult torso. His gun hand is from Stargrave. His power fist is from Imperial Guard. I forget what the backpack is, but I think it's Stargrave. And that helmet is just some weirdo random helmet made out of resin that I got from a company like, like Cromlech, Max Mini, Puppets War, those types of folks. Second from the right is Genestealer Cultist legs, of course. Admech torso, including the coat. Those arms are Genestealer Cultist arms, and also the gun. The backpack is from Imperial Guard, maybe either new Imperial Guard or old Imperial Guard Acadians, I forget which. And then that head is, again, like a random resin bit. And then the guy on the right, that torso legs combo is a single piece from a company called Cromlech. And I think it was designed, it's for people who want to make, I think, their own Steel Legion. Is it kind of what the vibe I was getting from it? It was just a bunch of bodies, like, the torsos and legs all in one, and stuck together, but they're all in a box. And then the arms are from, I think they're from I was going to say StarCraft. No, Stargrave, I think. And then that head is Adeptus Mechanicus as well. So, boom, there you go. But it's just kind of fun. It's getting darker and the clouds are coming in. Wrong way. It's always the way that I think is the right way is always the wrong way. It's weird. Cheers from Germany. 15 minutes behind in the stream. Well, me too. Building some Kill Team Necromunda stuff to add to my Stargrave game. Nice. Do you have a go-to method for creating battle damage on armor? If you want to do it physically, like, an actual like surface thing, like you want to make it in the plastic, I will just usually use like a bit of a hobby knife, an X-Acto blade, whatever. Or sometimes I will use something pointy, like if I want to make it look like there's small impacts, like little tiny maybe bullet holes, I'll use like a little pin maybe or whatever. Or if I want to go bigger, I will then use a drill, like a hand drill, a little pin vise. If you want to do it cool, what I like to do is use a pin vise but not go deep. So if you look at the pin vise, bit, like zoomed way in, the top of the bit, the part where it touches the model is usually, it's not like this, it's like, like this. So if you take that pin vise and you just start to kind of rotate it and drill in just a little tiny bit, then it looks like a bullet impact that bounced off, because you can see it's not very deep, it's shallow, right? If you drill in to the point where it goes into darkness when you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that looks like a through and through almost, or whatever, and maybe it is, but yeah, that's the thing. So I do that sometimes too. Greetings from a slightly rainy Temple Patrick, Northern Ireland. How you doing? Currently kit bashing a Thousand Suns Demon Prince from an old world Necro Sphinx and a Tzeentch Lord of Change. See, that sounds like fun too. Seeing Peach's video about using kids' wood blocks for terrain really inspired me. Kit bashing terrain seems to make a lot of sense. I want multi-game pieces. Yeah, I make very little terrain that I can't use multi-game. I mean, honestly, just about anything you can use in multiple games, unless you only play like very specific stuff. Like you're like, I only play Age of Sigmar. Okay, well, then sci-fi stuff is probably not for you. But like I have Age of Sigmar terrain that I can use in any fantasy game. I have fantasy terrain that I could use in Age of Sigmar games. I have in sci-fi, I've got so much Star Wars stuff, this, that, the other thing. I'm a little bummed about the new Star Wars Legion rules. It seems like I'm probably not going to end up playing them. They've made some changes that I'm just not, I'm looking at and I'm like, ugh. So, I mean, I have an Empire, a painted Empire force, which now is not complete because they've also increased the number of models you need in any given force, it seems like. And so, yeah, I think I might just sell all my stuff that I haven't painted, which is a bummer because I've got a lot of Star Wars style buildings that I either 3D printed or had 3D printed or whatever. But they can be used in any kind of sci-fi game, really. It's fine. But it is a bit of a bummer that they made that change. And the funny thing is, too, and this is, I don't know what, this is a marketing thing, but they made a pretty drastic change to the rules. Not just like, oh, we're going to change some stuff. Like it's a completely new document, but they don't call it a new edition. No, it's not a new edition. You're like, really? Because it kind of seems like a new edition. And I'm sure it's a marketing thing. It's like when iPhone, at one point, they had the iPhone and the iPhone 3, then the iPhone, and then it was the iPhone, and then when it was going to be the iPhone 2, they just said, or maybe it was I don't know. Companies love to just be like, no, it's not the iPhone 4, it's the new iPhone. You mean the fourth one? No, we're not calling it iPhone 4, it's the new iPhone. And you're like, but it's the fourth one, so we're all going to call it the fourth one, so we know what's going on. Windows did the same thing, where they're just like, we're skipping Windows 9. You're like, all right, well, weird. Let's see here. North Star and Wargames Atlantic are awesome figure sets. So many extra parts included. Oh my God, yeah, that's the other thing too. Yeah, you get so many extra bits. That is one thing about. I'm working on some models from a company called Fireforge Games. I just want to add some like undead soldiers, which I'm still going to paint as ghosts, but they are sculpted to look like almost like zombie soldiers, fantasy ones. I'm going to paint them as ghosts, and I'm going to be adding them to my ghost force for Death Wizards. But as far as I can tell, they give you exactly, like there's 12 models in that box, and they give you 12 heads. Maybe. They maybe don't even. Like some of the models, I think you have to build where they're holding their head in one hand as they hold like a shield or a sword in the other hand. Because there's 12 models in that box, but I feel like there's really only 8 heads. So they're either hiding heads elsewhere on the sprue, but I know at least in a couple of spots, there's an arm holding a head underneath it, like a basketball. And that's weird to me, because companies like, North Star and Wargames Atlantic are like, hey, there's 24 models in this box. There's 100 heads. So knock yourself out. You know what I mean? So if you want to have extra heads for later in kit bashing, definitely take a look at the North Star, Stargrave, and Frostgrave models. And then, of course, the stuff from Wargames Atlantic. Definitely. Jordan's Sorcery's Cat is another gem in the hobbyverse. I don't think I've seen any of their videos. Just discover your channel. Well, how you doing? Started a Drukhari army recently and decided to try kit bashing, mostly just a bunch of head and weapon swaps, but it's been a fun experience. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. It's like a definite, it's like a creative thing that you get to do that's, I think, a lot more interesting. Is there an artistic difference between buying kits just to kit bash versus just using the bits in your collection? No, I don't think so. Because if you buy something just to kit bash it, it's just becoming bits that end up in your collection. You know what I mean? So, um, wish me luck as I mow my front lawn on a Florida morning. Kids and wife overseas on vacation. Well, I hope you don't. There's no gators by you, are there? I hope not. Hello from Germany. How you doing? I always thought that some factions between 40k and Age of Sigmar Warhammer Fantasy Battles are obvious combinations in terms of kit bashing. Oh, sure. Can't get enough Stargrave. It's my #1 played minis game now. Nice. Yeah, Stargrave is also awesome. I mean, not just the models, but the game itself is also awesome. I used to insist on saying conversion instead of kit bash because I heard conversion first. Now I realize they are different things. One is cutting and fabricating. The other is combining various parts. Yeah, like if you were to like do a repose but use all the original parts, then I guess I would call that a conversion as opposed to a kit bash. It's a little bit semantics, maybe a little bit, but yeah, if I had to define them, they had to be separate. Conversion would be when you take a model and cut it apart and pose it together in a different way and use green stuff to make sure that you can't tell where you cut it and all that kind of jazz. I would say that could be more of a conversion, whereas when you're like, well, I'm going to give that guy a different head and a different gun, in my mind, that's can be kit bashing. It also kind of depends too. Sometimes I think the word conversion is like, because I've done a little bit of judging in way back in the day. I did some judging at different tournaments and stuff like that for paint scores and such. And so conversions, when you were going through the rubric of like, whether all the different things you did or didn't do to get your score for your paints and stuff like that, conversions very frequently meant, well, you modified this model. It's still supposed to be this model for this thing in this army, but you've changed it, converted it, if you will. Which in that situation could go either way. It could be just simply reposing and cutting and whatever, or it could be adding new parts. So yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. I feel like it's a little bit more semantics than anything else. But when you're like, I want to make a thing out of whole cloth. I want to make it out of a bunch of different parts, and I'm going to use it for some sort of weird game or multiple different types of weird games. Indie stuff, model agnostic stuff, whatever. That's definitely kit bashing. But if you're like, I want my Space Marine to have a different shoulder pad, I don't know if that's kit bashing. I mean, it is, in my opinion. But if you wanted to call it conversion, I wouldn't tell you were wrong either. I don't know. Language is fun. One of my girls flung herself at a squirrel today. I'm assuming you're talking about a cat, as opposed to, say, one of your daughters. But maybe. Had the windows open. Both were very surprised when kitty and window screen exploded out of the frame and landed on said squirrel. Oh, yeah, no, that's no fun. We haven't had any cats escape recently, which is good. But years ago, we had the house here for not that many years yet. And we just had the 2 cats who are both passed at this point. It was Diesel, who just passed at Thanksgiving. I've talked about a bunch on the channel. And then it was Sapphire, who she passed away in like 2014, I think. And my wife and I were in the den, and we were watching TV or whatever, and my wife got up to go get something out of the kitchen, and she goes by the dining room. There's 2 windows in the dining room, and she sees Diesel's butt half in the house, and the front half of him is out. Like the screen has been like pulled out of the frame, kind of the actual fabric of the screen, and he's like squished in between there, and his front half of his body is outside the house and his butt sticking in the house. And my wife is like, oh my God. And she goes and she grabs him and she pulls him back in, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, what'd you do to the screen? And all this kind of stuff. And he's just like, oh. And then she hears this noise. And at this point I've gotten up, and we come and we look, and we see that Sapphire is out of the house and is down on the grass underneath the dining room window, and she's trying to jump back up into the window. So, and she was always a tiny little girl, but she was like she was like laying in the window, leaning against the screen, and evidently fell out because the screen like pulled out of the frame, and then she just fell out and landed. And Diesel was like trying to figure out what she was doing, and that's why he was half out the window. So then we had to go outside and get her, but of course she was all freaked out because she didn't like going outside like Diesel did. So she was all hidey and like underneath things and all that kind of stuff. And it took a long time. We brought her back in the house, and then she was like, but yeah, so I'm always wary. I have a tendency to check almost every night in the summer when the windows are open. I'll like, check to make sure that none of the screens are like pushed out of the frame or anything like that anywhere, just so, you know, cats don't get out. But yeah, that's my story. Wargames Atlantic has a bunch of good kits for figs or for figs and or parts. Yeah, Wargames Atlantic, not just for sci-fi though, too. They've got plenty of stuff for they've got a bunch of like World War I type stuff which you could use for Turnip 28 or some other, or like Last War, or all kinds of fun games like that. And then they also have fantasy stuff too, and historical stuff too. So I was today years old when I realized I can use elves and dwarves for death wizards, and no one will tell me I can't. I won't. Yeah, Vince won't, for sure. That's the great thing about tabletop wargaming, is it's your game. You can do it the way you want. Good morning from Columbus, Ohio. My kit bashing consists of kit bashing rules due to limited space for minis. I mean, that makes sense too. That's a different type of kit bashing to some degree, but for sure. Deciding, you know what, I want to take this rule and this rule and this rule and squish them together and make it my own kind of house rules and stuff like that. Again, another one of the great reasons for playing tabletop war games. The Necromunda Caudor gang is super useful for Mordheim warbands. Oh yeah, Caudor, that box is one of the better ones. Like, I really like the Van Saar box as well, because I just like the aesthetic of it, and it looks way more sci-fi. I would say the Caudor box and the other one. What's the other one? Caudor and not Escher, not Goliath, not Van Saar, not Delac. I can never remember this other one, the other name. Anyway, the other group, they also work. They're almost post-apocalyptic is what they look like. I don't like kit bashing because I lack the attention span for one. Having said that, coincidentally, I am working on my lightly kit bashed Elysian drop troop vet guard kill team. Go me. Well, go you indeed. Sure. I always wondered about kit bashing. Just don't have a use for them other than to look at. Well, I guess it depends on the games you play to some degree. That's the thing. And you could also. A lot of people are like, well, I want to play this GW game or that GW game, but the models are very expensive. Then you can always make your own models. You can always kit bash from other companies and make, you know, cool stuff for Warcry, cool stuff for Kill Team. Can you take it to a tournament and play it legally if it's not Games Workshop models? Probably not. Do you go to a lot of tournaments? Maybe, but maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm a big fan of, if a tournament doesn't allow you to use the models you want, then maybe find a better tournament, you know, better tournament organizers. That's just my own personal preference. But again, I don't really play tournaments because I'm not into tournament play. I would much rather play with friends and do something more narrative and have a good time with it that way myself. So in that situation, kit bashing is always welcomed. But then the other thing too is to also look at it from the aspect of like, well, maybe it's the game too, you know. That's one of the reasons why like miniature agnostic games are give you so much freedom, is because you can use whatever models you might already have that aren't kit bashed at all, or you can kit bash and make stuff completely unique and interesting. These guys in this picture I keep going back to in the title card, I designed these models initially stats wise to be for Space Weirdos, which is a really super fun game that I enjoy that costs like $5. It's like 16 pages long. But yeah, those guys are all built. I have stats on my iPad for them, you know, so because you can have like a power fist, you can have this kind of gun, you can have that kind of stuff. And so you just go through, I like to do that and like figure out what I want and get the points right and then kit bash from there. The other way to do it is just to build something cool and then try to figure out how to stat it out for different games. You can do that too, but and the thing is I've statted those guys out for one game, but if I decided I want to use them in some other completely different game, then you just have to sort of figure out, well, will this work? Like, if this guy's got a pistol and a sword, but the stat is that he has a heavy machine gun, to me, I'm like, well, that other guy doesn't look like he has a heavy machine gun. Again, you can use a model that looks however you want for whatever you want. But for me, I at least want it to look sort of like he has a heavy machine gun if that's the stats that I'm using him for. But I'm not that fancy, I guess. Good morning from rainy Oklahoma. How you doing? It moved. Man, moved a bunch. I'm way behind. There we go. Oklahoma. Asher Gangers make a nice addition to my Gene Stealer cult, plus I had a lot of extra arms from the Acolytes. Well, that would make sense. Sure. Morning from a sunny SoCal. Recently noticed our local club has a lot of great painters and kit bashers. Seems to be outside the norm around here. Kit bashing is outside the norm, just in general. All right, which way do you think I got to turn this way? This way? Nope, wrong way again. I should just start thinking about which way I want to turn it and then turn it the opposite. I bet it'll always work. But yeah, I would say that kit bashing is definitely the more kind of indie sort of vibe, and outside of the norm for sure. Uncle Adam, thanks for the Hobby Tourist video. It had to be said, gatekeeper stink. Yeah, I'm not a fan. It's made for a bit of a crazy weekend, though. It is what it is. Madhouse Minis. Morning all, just ordered Steel Rift last night. Gonna work on scratch building some terrain while I wait for it to arrive. I have terrain to work on for Steel Rift. I have 2 forces finished, even like matte varnished and the whole shebang. I showed him. On Tuesday this week, I played Flames of Orion, which is another mech game, but it's made by Steve from the Hive Scum podcast. And it's a cool little kind of simplified mech game, and it's fun. And it is, we played that over at Sam's, and in my case that I brought that had my models in it, it also had all my models in it for Steel Rift. So he got a chance to kind of take a look at those as well. So he's interested in checking that out as well. So, and I've got 2 forces, so boom, there you go. But I do want to get a bunch of terrain finished. It's primed. I mean, it's built and primed, but that's as far as I've gotten with the terrain. It's mostly all 3D printed stuff, to be honest, but yeah. Just ordered Steel Rift. I just read that. When will GW release the next Warhammer Plus model? I have no idea. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how it is that, like, that's supposed to be a big selling point on Warhammer Plus, and then I keep hearing about people going, where is it? Why do I not have it? It's amazing how sometimes they can be a little squirrely as such a big company, but yeah. Scratch building small scale terrain for mecha games can get out of control easily. Too much fun. Yeah, that's true too. That's a lot of fun. Affinity Rocks usually on sale, and I have Photo Designer and Publisher, so much nicer. Affinity has a deal at the moment where you can get their 3 main softwares for 6 months for free. Well, Affinity doesn't have a that's right. You can. It's like a really long-term trial. Yeah, because you're right because they don't do subscriptions currently, although they got bought by Canva, so that's probably not good. But nonetheless, at this point right now, let's just assume that it's fine. But yeah, they're basically like, hey, because Adobe is punching themselves in the face right now as hard as they possibly can. Like everything they're doing is just stepping on another rake and having a company hit them. And yeah, Adobe's just, oh my God. Anyway, so other companies are like smelling blood in the water. And so you have companies like Affinity who are like, hey, I got an idea. You don't like paying for that company where they basically steal your information and use it to train their AI? What if you tried out our software for free for 6 months? Let's take a look at that. And that's what they're doing. So yeah. And again, it's inexpensive in comparison too. Licenses are 50% off. I should honestly look into it. Like, I currently have all the Adobe stuff because it's kind of part of what I need for my job, but I don't use the editing stuff. I don't use After Effects. I really only use Photoshop, Lightroom, InDesign, and Illustrator, but I don't know. Let's see here. I use Canva, the online graphic design site, to design my documents for my games. I've never used Canva. Being a professional, for lack of a better term, graphic designer, I've always had access to other stuff, but Canva is online oriented, right? Yeah. I have Publisher, still not good with it. I guess I don't need it as much as Photo. Sure. Affinity Suite is also 50% off. Get them while they still sell perpetual licensed software. Canva just bought them, and that's likely to change. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Ugh. Hello from Belgium. Looking forward to your terrain building plans for this summer. Planning to make a decent Death Wizards table. I've got... So yesterday I went to the store. I went to the hardware store and I bought some... It's this like really super fine kind of sand that you add to paint to make it textured. Like for on your walls and stuff when you're using a roller or whatever. So I'm going to be using that and adding that to Mod Podge and black paint, potentially even this afternoon, because I've got a 2-foot by 2-foot foam board that I want to make it look like kind of like asphalt, like a parking lot. And so I've already like poked holes in it and put cracks in it and stuff like that. But I didn't like dig big chunks out of it because I still made to dig a couple of chunks here, potholes. Why not? But yeah, that is the plan. That's my first kind of bigger terrain piece, is making that 2-foot by 2-foot board, because then I can use it for blackout. I can use it for Space Weirdos. I can use it for a lot of 28mm scale stuff, because I've got a bunch of buildings and stuff that I can put on there and everything. And yeah, that should be very cool. Plastic boxes that premium candles or chocolates are packaged in are usually clear styrene to make a fantastic base for structures. Detail with strip and sheet and styrene rod and spare bits. Yeah. Blackout definitely a quick game to play. Yeah, it is definitely... If you are used to playing other games where you're like, okay, well, I got hit again. That guy's down to like 3 health or whatever. This is not that type of game. Blackout is definitely like, if you get shot, you're probably out. Like, it's very rare that you're not. Generally, if you get hit, you're out. So, yeah, it can be a very quick game to play, which is why you have to be much more tactical and pay attention to where you are and your lines of fire and all that kind of jazz. So, yeah. Have you ever had any experience with Epic Encounters minis from Steamforged? I actually helped judge a painting contest at... Where the heck was I? I was at a trade show in Canada back in early May, and some of the folks from Steamforged had me help judge because Steamforged was running kind of a paint and take on some of their models. They're like D&D style models, but big ones. They were like, it was a big kobold giant or something like that. And so you were given a half hour to paint it. And then, so it was, and then at the end, all these people had painted it. And this is, again, a trade show. So predominantly all the people who are there are store owners or store employees, not gamers. I mean, not that those people aren't gamers, but you know what I mean? It's not a gaming convention. So yeah, the big cobalt giant thing or whatever, I looked at a lot of them, and they're nice models. It's a good model. I have not looked at tons of the stuff that they make, but I've looked at some of it, and some of it I know there's something recently I was like, I should really get that because I could use that for Death Wizards, but I can't think of what it was now. But it was definitely some Steamforged stuff. But yeah, they're not like crazy super high quality, but they're pretty high quality. I bought all 3 blackout teams, but no dusters. I own 2 dusters, but I have not built them yet. One of them has got really skinny ankles, and it makes me nervous. So I'm trying to figure out if I can like figure out a way to like maybe make that duster look like he's like also like leaning on something, like a piece of ruin on the base or something like that. So I've got another point. So it's not just 2 skinny ankles holding up this big robot, that I've got something else for him to like rest on so that it doesn't, I don't know. I haven't figured that one out yet. Hello from Quebec, where it's hard to find anything but GW for kitbashing. Stores in general are hard to find stuff other than GW, just straight up. And predominantly it's because the GW stuff is the stuff that sells the most. And a lot of stores don't want to take the risk of bringing in stuff that then sits on the shelves for a long time. And I can understand that to some degree. I think that specifically stuff like Wargames Atlantic and Stargrave. Wargames Atlantic, I'm 98% sure you can buy through regular distribution, but maybe you can't. Stargrave, because they're over in England, I don't know if you can buy it through regular distribution, but maybe. But if I owned a store, I would at least have not one of every box they make, because they make a lot of boxes, but I would have at least one of several of the boxes so that people could come in and be like, well, these guys are cool. What's this all about? And then, you know, And kit bashers might buy them too. But you don't have to go in heavy and be like, oh, I'm gonna get 10 of each, please, because that's Wargames Vault is, or sorry, Wargames Atlantic over there on those boxes up there. They make a lot of models, a lot of different kits. So yeah, you'd be pretty deep then if you did. Tuning in to say that I'm new in the hobby and kit bash is very fun to me. Kit bash is a lot of fun. Kit bashing is a ton of fun. It's like I said, I think it's one of the more creative ways to hobby, and especially if you're doing stuff that's miniature agnostic, you can do all kinds of cool things. I used to spend more time kit bashing than playing games. Nice. My fun was basically creating things that never existed before. Miss doing it. I mean, that's the thing too, is that like there's a guy who used to live down the street from me here, and he loved to kit bash and he never painted. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get to it someday. Like he had no intention ever of painting. He just loved to take multiple kits and he would love to convert and kit bash. So he would like cut parts around and try to make them reposed, but then add other parts and do all kinds of stuff like that. And he would love to look at these models and be like, that's very cool. Even though they were like, there was like metal and plastic and resin. So everything looks weird because it's multiple different colors and all that kind of stuff. And there's green stuff in there and everything like that. And that's as far as he wanted to go. I'm like, that's cool, man. Like for me, when I get done with the kit bash, the very next thing that I want to do, and I want to do it very quickly, is prime that thing. Because as soon as you take this model and you're like, and then as soon as you prime it, like here, right? These guys are Zenithal primed, but leading up to that, like they were all different colors because like that guy second from the right there, that cloak that he's got, that was an AdMech cloak, but it was from the original Kill Team 18 2018 box, where you had gray, like light gray plastic, not the normal gray plastic, Gene Stealer cultists, and the AdMech guys were in red plastic, if you remember that. So like that guy's torso and cloak were in red, but then his legs were in light gray, not normal gray, and then that resin bit was like tan, and like all these different parts, and you get them to that point, you're like, but when you prime them, then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, now I see it. You know what I mean? So for me, that's always the next step. But for Zach, the guy that used to live down the block down here, he would do kit bashing and with no intention of ever painting, and it was everyone's got their own kind of thing, which I think is cool. Let's see here. One thing I hate is when there are expansions at the game store, but the base game isn't in stock. Yeah, that's kind of that we only deal with new stuff kind of thing that GW's been doing lately. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Both my main 40k forces are like 90% kit bashed. My Death Guard army incorporate a lot of Skaven bits and some greebled up Plague Monk Skaven to use as poxwalkers. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, that fits together really well. Like Vince did, it's always Skaven. I see people like Vince has got an entire Stormcast army, but they're Skaven. Like they're Stormcast armor, but then it's like Skaven heads poking out the top. I got another friend here in town who did an entire Caradon Overlords, the flying dwarves or whatever. He did an entire group of them, but they were also all Skaven. So they were the KO bodies, but then instead of like the metal head with the metal beard, like you've got to have a special part of your helmet just for your beard or whatever. Or else if they don't have it, like it would just be rat heads poking out. And yeah, they were super good too. They were a lot of fun. How do you feel home 3D printing is affecting the availability of pewter or plastic wargaming minis from vendors? We were talking before about how if you get into it that way, you can totally do all the kit bashing digitally, which is also still very, very cool. And I don't have any problem with digital kit bashing either. In digital kit bashing, if you didn't hear it earlier, it's like you have like, let's say some sort of 3D STL model from whomever, and then you maybe are like, that's cool, but I don't like that head. And then you can open it up in like Blender or other types of software and just be like, okay, I'm going to cut that head off, like do a Boolean or whatever. And then you're going to be like, okay, now I'm going to take this head off of this other model, 3D model, and then put it on there. And I'm going to change this and change that. And I've seen tutorials out there about not even just like swapping and cutting, but also like completely reposing, like how to do that in Blender and stuff like that. And these are models that don't usually come in parts. normally when you get an STL for printing, it is a single mesh. It is not something that would, like, if you had sculpted it yourself, it would be very easy for you to reposition and do things with it. You usually design it that way so that you can do it. But once it is a single STL that you send out, it's not exactly designed to do that anymore. So it takes a little bit of skill to figure that out, and definitely some familiarity with the software. But digital kit bashing is very cool, because then again, once you've kit bashed it, boom, it's done. It's custom. But you didn't have to like cut and paste and go through all that rigmarole. Back in the day, I kit bashed cheerleaders for my Eldar. Nice. There was a guy back when we used to play Combat Patrol, like the old version of Combat Patrol back before this new thing. There was a guy who would come to events who'd come up, I think, from the Milwaukee area, and he had a Dark Eldar Combat Patrol that was Christmas themed. Like, it was all red and green. All the Dark Eldar had, like, they all kind of looked like elves. Well, because they are elves, you know, but they looked like Christmas elves. And the little, whatever those little skimmers are that they drive around in, like the Ravager and stuff like that. I don't know where he had gotten them, because again, this is 10, 15 years ago, but he had tiny little Christmas lights that actually like blinked and stuff, like between the little masts on the, you know, on the Ravager and whatnot. And it was, yeah. So he had to have them on bases that were like a little bit thicker, because you had to be able to put the batteries in there. They were probably double A's or triple A's or something like that back then. But yeah, it was kind of cool. Let's see here. Other older editions of 40K actually encouraged kit bashes and even complete scratch builds. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. Like when I first got into Chaos, my Chaos Lord was basically a fantasy model, a Nurgle Chaos Lord from fantasy. You know, the big fat guy that's got the big axe he's holding down, and his like entrails are like over the handle and stuff like that. You've probably seen the model. It's a very iconic kind of like model for Nurgle. What's the name of it? Not the Rotbringers, but the other ones. Anyway, I wanted to make him be my leader for my Chaos Space Marines, but I'm like, well, he's a fantasy model, but you know. So back then you could also kind of custom build the list for your, you know, you could pick from this and this and this and this to make your own, you know, Chaos Lord. And so I gave him a demon sword, but I just made it a demon axe. And then I gave him like an old school Chaos backpack, you know, like Space Marine backpack, but for Chaos Space Marines, an old school one. And then he had one shoulder pad over here that's got like big spikes coming out of it, like in the normal model. And then I put another like Chaos or Nurgle shoulder pad, like 40K shoulder pad on this shoulder. I put a pistol on his hip, like in a holster. But otherwise, he was doing most of the work with the axe. And then the last piece is that I took a Space Marine combat knife and I cut the tip off of it. And then I glued it to his chest so it looked like somebody had ran up and stabbed him right in the chest. And he was just like, what? Like he's just walking around with this big giant combat knife sticking out of his sternum, and then he's still got the axe, which was like a demon weapon and stuff like that. I miss the days back when you could customize, like in the rules, you could customize your Chaos Lord or whatever, that kind of stuff. That was very cool. Thank you for getting me into One Page Rules. I absolutely love their game. It corrects most of the problems with that other game. Patreon for $10 a month, and now I have to learn how to use my 2 3D printers. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Good morning from the marshes of Chesapeake Bay. I hope you're doing well. Let's see here. My oldest 80s and 90s era miniatures have been born again in miniature agnostic games. My old GW, Legions of Steel, and Mutant Chronicles guys are fighting with Stargrave and Deathfields guys. Yeah, that's the thing that's so awesome about the miniatures agnostic stuff, is that you can. It's not about constantly buying new miniatures because they say you're supposed to buy new miniatures because of the new book. It's about using stuff you've already got, kit bashing stuff you've got sitting around, doing things that you really enjoy. I don't know. Kit bashed Hasselfree's Taxus figure with a replacement arm because I lost hers. Sometimes that happens too. Yeah, sometimes kit bashing is out of necessity. Early is on time. Had a boss whose worst habit was setting his clock 15 minutes ahead and then constantly getting angry at people for being late when they weren't. Well, yeah. I mean, on Bad Kiddos Kickstarter, great looking minis. Yeah, she. I mean, she doesn't sculpt the stuff. She pays for sculptors, but she runs a great company. I met Annie in person when I was at UKGE last year. Super nice lady and awesome minis. I have been in online chats with her. She and I virtually met on the Andy and Rem show years ago, but I have not yet met her in person. Someday. I'd love a full kit bash game of something like Thundar the Barbarian or DC Comics Warlord, full-on pulp fantasy and sci-fi. Morning from Maryland. Just returned from a major gaming convention in Pennsylvania called Historicon. I've heard of Historicon. Played my first game of Silver Bayonet. Oh, nice. I just build Lord of the Rings minis. Lord of the Rings, my first war game years ago. The cycle is complete. Well, there you go. Hopefully Rex is less concerned as the sun starts coming up later. That would be nice. Touching out my Stormcast Spearhead Force after a game yesterday, sitting in the smaller table, meant I saw all my painting mistakes. Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah. What did you think about it? I hope you. I enjoyed when I played Spearhead the first time before they announced 4th edition. But the thing that still made me wary is how small the board is. I will also admit I do not like them printing the what do you call them, the objectives on the board. That I don't know, I don't like it. The cat lottery, do they jump onto your crotch or off of it? I mean, it's mostly just and they never jump off. I don't get a lot of lap sitting cats. That's the thing too. Diesel in his old age got a little bit more lap city, but not for very long. Sapphire, one of our earliest cats, if it was winter and I had a Snuggie, you know what a Snuggie is? It's like a blanket, but it's got arms in it, so you can still like get at your laptop or whatever without having to like get out from underneath the blanket. They sold them on like TV or whatever. My brother bought me one kind of as a joke. He got it from like Walgreens or something like that for Christmas. But it's actually really nice. When I would put that on when I was cold in the winter to watch TV and stuff like that, man, she loved that. Like, she would not sit on my lap unless I had the Snuggie, and then she would immediately get in like the little hammock between my legs, because she just loved being in that little kind of like hammock area there and that material or whatever. She was nuts for that. But every other cat we've ever owned basically is just like, yeah, I'm going to sit over here. I don't want to sit on your lap. And I'm like, but that's literally all I want is a lap cat. Well, percentages. Love your kitty stories. Oh, good to hear. I have a kit-bashed shelter dog, 40-something Shih Tzu, 40-something Pekingese, and 15 Maltese. She looks like the Luck Dragon from Neverending Story. Nice. My mom's got a dog that we think is mostly Pekingese, ? Her name is Stella. It won't calm down until about 3 years old. Mine's 2.5 and still behaving like that. Yeah, I hope it eventually happens. I don't know. Like, all the other cats we've ever gotten have always been like 1.5 to 2.5 when we first got them, and they were always pretty chill. We got George, who's the most recent one, who we got to be friends with and hopefully, tire out a little bit, Rex. He's like 1.5. And there's there's a paper trail. With with Rex, they were like, he was brought in as a stray, and they looked at him and were like, he's like 3. And then we took him to the vet, and the vet's like, no, he's not. He's like not yet 1, probably. But with George, there was a paper trail from like where when he was a kitten, brought to these people, and then they had him for this amount of time, and then they did this, and blah, 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 and then he ended up at the shelter. So George is a good boy, but he is also, again, like I said, a unit. He is like 16 pounds. He's a moose, big orange. And he's generally pretty chill too, Cats and the inappropriate landing zone. Yeah. Had a Maine Coon used to do the WWE wake every day. Oh, that's not fun. Yeah. Our new pussycat sometimes likes to wake me by biting my exposed big toe. Yeah. Every once in a while, if you move your feet underneath the blankets when they're feeling like playtime is on, then yeah, you'll get a little bit of that. Your vid with the OPR lizard guy inspired me to pick up an army's worth from them during a sale not long after. The lizard guys from One Page Rules are awesome. I just really like those models. Whether it's the fantasy ones or the sci-fi ones. I sort of like the sci-fi ones a little bit better. But yeah. Afternoon from a good bit too hot Berlin. Oh, that's no problem. Or no good, I mean. Let's see. Bear Dark Truffle Matte Spray. Like Bear, like the house paint people? I didn't know that. Oh. Is perfect for glittering loot speed paint scheme. No kidding. They're only allowed to be outside for short periods when it's hot. They're all AC babies. Nice. Cool game for kit bash vehicles is Tonks. Bill making stuff has some great videos of scratch building some tanks. Worth a look if that's your thing. Tonks, that's the one by Apocrypha Now, I think? Question mark? I'm not sure. I haven't played it, but I've been told about it. I was curious what your thoughts are of Adepticon moving to Milwaukee. I think it's awesome. I can't wait. It's going to be, it's going to be different, certainly, obviously, but it's going to basically bring me back to my old school Gen Con days, because it's in the same place that Gen Con used to be back when Gen Con moved to Indianapolis in 2003. No, sorry, 2003, not 2023. 2003 is when the first year when Gen Con went to Indianapolis. So from 92 to 2002, I was going to Gen Con in Milwaukee at basically the same location. When I first started, I don't think technically what they used to call the Midwest Express Center, I don't know that was even built yet, but it was during that 10 years it got built, and then things switched over to that. And now the Midwest Express Center is now known as the Baird Center, BAIRD. It is currently, there is a anime convention that they hold at this place every year that's 20 to 22,000 people, and they've got plenty of room to hold that group, so there will be plenty of room for Adepticon to grow. There's a lot more hotels much nearer than to the place out in Schaumburg, and also you can literally walk outside and go to restaurants within a couple of blocks all over the place. So I think it's going to be great. I went and visited with a lot of people from Adepticon and other guests and stuff that were invited along back at the end of May. And yeah, it's an amazing facility. So it's going to be spectacular. Could Zombie Rally show up in an issue of Snarl? Well, it's a card game, so no, probably not. Concerning the hobby tourist thing, I've never gotten into wargaming enough to collect squads of any particular game. I'd say I'm a casual wargamer, or you could say a wargaming enthusiast or a hobby enthusiast. There were people in the comments that were like, well, I've only ever just like sort of paid attention to it, but I've never pulled the trigger and actually bought anything or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But I wouldn't call yourself a hobby tourist in that situation. I'd say enthusiast, because tourist seems to be a weighted term, you know what I mean? I wish the manufacturer would make plastic miniatures of Mexican luchador masked wrestlers. I swear to God, there's a company out there that does that. Impact Miniatures, maybe? Maybe. Various masked heads, capes, and striking or grappling arms can be used for superheroes. Oh, good point. Yeah. Let's see here. So I'm at the point of painting that I'm basing my models. What is basing material called at hobby craft shops? Sand. What I use mostly for my basing material is generally, these days it is some kitty litter, maybe some little tiny chunks of cork, there's a texture paint, fine base texture paint from Monument that I like to use. It's a nice, got a nice, it's not too thick of a chunkiness, but you could also just mix paint and a little bit of sand if you wanted to. It depends on what you want to do. But yeah, I also always base my miniatures and put the texture on before I even get to priming and painting, so that at the end I don't have to then go back in and base paint, or paint the bases, or put on texture on the bases. I don't like that. I like to do it ahead of time. But however you want to do it. Hello from Argentina. I've been kit bashing with parts from failed 3D prints, and it's super fun. Yeah, that's another good reason to keep some of that stuff. When you have a bad print, you go, well, but that arm's still pretty good though. I use that later on. It's not a bad idea at all. Digital kit bashing is great because you can scale up, scale down parts. Also true. Never tried it, but I'm envious of those who have the know-how to do it. Yeah, that's actually a good point too, is that if you're like, well, that's not big enough, or it's too big, then it's easy to change. Enjoy kit bashing, and easier when the models are plastic instead of metal. I agree. I know some people prefer metal miniatures for certain reasons, but in general for kit bashing, I think plastic is almost always easier than metal. Just bought a 1 pound water pistol to convert into a shuttle for my Stargrave crew. Nice. I like the games that encourage kit bashing. If you want skirmishy, foresty, folk horror games for that kind of thing, I can recommend Veritwood and The Weald. The Weld? I've heard of Veritwood. I haven't heard of the second one. I've been kit bashing since Redacted, and I'm glad I've accepted the superiority of plastic now, at least for bashing. There you go. Is there a difference between kit bashing and conversions, or are they just different names for the same thing? I think it's a bit semantics. We were talking about this earlier. Sometimes conversions are when you're like, well, this is still a 40K specific Space Marine, for example, but I've given him a different helmet. I think that if there's going to be a difference, the only difference I can really think of is that kit bashing is very frequently, I am making this to make it into something new, and like maybe for a miniature agnostic game or for something else that you're making up or whatever, as opposed to this is still going to be the thing that I bought it for a specific game, but I'm going to change it. In that situation, I could see that being conversion, but they're really kind of two sides of the same coin. Those North Star mini sets are almost kit bashing training wheels. Oh yeah, for sure. Same with them, and same with the I grabbed this one because the other box keeps falling apart, but it's the Age of Chivalry Foot Knights, 1150 to 1320. There's 24 multi-part hard plastic 28mm miniatures in here, and you can build them all kinds of different ways. In the normal fashion that Wargames Atlantic works, it's usually just multiple copies of the same sprue. So this sprue is the same as the other 3 sprues that are in here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of legs on here, and then there's a bunch of shields and a bunch of torsos and a bunch of so many arms holding swords and axes and spears and all that kind of jazz. And then, like I said, there's 6 guys on this sprue, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you use twice as many heads as what you need just on this sprue alone. So again, if any point you're like, I need a guy who's got a cool mace, you just throw that onto any model or whatever, Now, you do have to be sometimes important. Like, I don't really care a ton about scale, because sometimes people are small and sometimes people are big, and so that's fine. But if you put a very, very small arm on a big guy, that sometimes looks a little weird, or a very big head on a small person, that also looks weird. So sometimes you have to watch that when you're kit bashing. But for the most part, honestly, I always throw this around like I'm like a foot taller than my wife, but we are the same scale. Look at Kevin Hart and The Rock. They're the same scale, but they're not the same size. So that happens. But yeah, I would definitely say that the stuff from Frostgrave, Stargrave, and pretty much everything from Wargames Atlantic are all, kind of training wheels for kit bashing. You're not wrong. Ghost Archipelago is another thing that our FLGS just added with Frostgrave and Oathmark. Ghost Archipelago is basically just a different version of Frostgrave. It's more piratey Frostgrave, if I remember correctly. It probably says Ghost Archipelago, but it still says Frostgrave probably on the box as well, because it's like a kind of an add-on to Frostgrave, if I remember correctly. That one I haven't played. Kitbashing and conversions can be the same thing. It depends on the context and subject. Yeah, basically. Working on a Mordheim gang made from mostly Frostgrave bits. Absolutely. They're also close enough to in scale that you can mix with Wargames Atlantic kits. Yeah. I would say that the stuff from Wargames Atlantic and Stargrave / Frostgrave and whatnot are closer to true 28 millimeter, whereas GW stuff is starting to get everything's getting a little bigger. Well, not everything. Honestly, I really like the scale of the new Cadians because they don't all have wrists this big around like the old Cadians used to, you know? They were all these super crazy stocky kind of things, and then you would take them and put them next to like a regular like Space Marine, and you're like, those guys are the same height. At least now it seems like if you put a new Cadian next to a Primaris Marine, they are substantially the Cadian or the Primaris is substantially larger, and you're like, oh yeah. Because it keeps reminding me of that bit from the trailer for the new Space Marine Space Marine video game, Space Marine 2, where like the Space Marines come and they're like walking along, and like that guy from the guard is just like looking at them as they go by, because they're like, you know, 2 heads taller than him, and they're just monsters. And that I'm glad that scale thing is kind of getting tweaked finally in 40K, but yeah. Otherwise, a lot of other models in 40K do seem to be getting bigger, but at least they didn't make the Imperial Guard also just as big, because I'd be like, what are you doing? Fireforge is a good scale for North Star and Miniature Atlantic too. Yeah. Again, I wish that they had more heads in that box, but I would say that conversions are more defined to represent a different version of a vehicle. Kitbash is more freeform. Could be. Got gas mask troops, which have bits from Spellcrow, Victoria, Secret Weapon, and Hasslefree. Oh yeah, I miss Secret Weapon sometimes. Easiest Kitbash I did was from Space Marine Adventures game from Barnes and Noble. Excuse me. Switched around the heads of Brother Frostclaw and Sergeant Cassius. Space Wolf deserves that beard more. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I know you've mentioned your microphone before. I can't recall. Have you used the Blue Yeti? Yeah. When I first started doing these live shows, I did the Blue Yeti. But a couple years back, at least, I switched to this one here. This is the Beacon mic. It's from a company called Beacon, which is spelled Beacon, but with no O. It's like Beacn. But it's nice. I like it. It did not come with this arm. I bought that separately. So there's that. Let's see here. Have any advice for color armor? I know Army Painter has a product called Fairy Dust for shine, but I'm thinking a metallic color would be better. I'm not sure what you mean. For color armor? Like what kind of color armor? You mean like Space Marine armor? Like Knights and Shining armor? That kind of stuff? Jenga is good for blocks? Sure. You always need undead. It's true. Just finished kitbashing a wizard toy into a junk piece of tech to make a wizard statue for a Frostgrave scenario. Nice. See, that's fun. Mowing the lawn really got me. Need to cool down with a shower. I hope no one steals my push lawnmower from my driveway. Else I'll need to tell the wife I need to ride on lawnmower. I mean, I get that. Legion stuff is a welcome change. The game has been the same for 6 years. I mean, I think if you play it probably like competitively, I can probably see that. I don't need it to change. I guess if my friend Kevin gets his group together, we could just ignore the entirety of the new rules and just play the old rules, I suppose. Obviously, we could do that. But I'm just, it seems like it's Asmodee / Fantasy Flight games / to some degree Atomic Mass games. It seems like their playbook is like, hey, we changed everything. Now you need to buy all new kits to modify your stuff so that it works. It's part of the problem of putting cards and bits and things and tokens and stuff like that in with the models, because then, at least, say what you will about Games Workshop, at least when they make a new edition of the rules or a new codex, you just change, you buy a new book and you're like, okay, cool. But with like X-Wing and all these different games, not only was it like you had to get a new book, which generally it was either free, like a download, which is good, but the little cardboard inserts that went on the bases and a lot of that stuff had to be bought in a kit so that you could upgrade it. And sometimes you had to buy, depending on how deep you were in a specific army, whether you had to buy like multiple of those kits and everything like that. And I'm like, yeah, it drives me kind of nuts. So I don't know. Like I said, I have a bunch of Legion stuff that I bought with the intention of playing a lot more Legion, and then it dried up in our area completely. And now with the rules change, I could see just shifting all the stuff that hasn't been built or put together or even taken out of the box. I could just probably shift it on eBay. Wizards of the Coast doing the same with D&D. New edition coming up, but they won't call it. Yeah, no, I've been seeing that too. I don't know what, like, oh, it's a new edition. Well, no, it's not a new edition. No. We're just making some changes to the old. No, it's a new edition. Newer GW miniatures seem to be designed so you can't kit bash them. I will not disagree with that, honestly. The way that so many of the new monopose models, and I'm not usually against monopose, but if you want to kit bash it, monopose sucks, but yeah, the way that most of their models going, even they're just, some of those models are just the biggest pain in the butt to put together because they've made it such a weird puzzle, like going back to Cursed City. Holy crap, some of those models are just like, what is it you want me to do here? And then you'd finally figure it out, and then you'd be like, okay, cool, well, now it's put together. There's no way for me to sub-assembly it if I need to be able to paint to get underneath this thing. I mean, it happened with the Gray Seer from the new Skaven Tide box. There's no way to, like, he's standing on top of a bell, as one does, and he has like his cloak, his robes or whatever are super stringy and going all over the place and flapping in the wind or whatever. It's a very dynamic sculpt, but there's no way to make it so that he isn't standing on that skull that I could find easily without just cutting it all apart and getting rid of the skull altogether. So I had to paint it all together, and then there were lots of times when I had to try to paint the bell underneath a flap of like, a string of like his robe and stuff. It'd be like, well, try not to get any on the robe. And it just, I feel like they're building a lot more of the models these days in a way that like no one who's ever painted before has ever looked at that and gone, or they're just building it in a way so that it's best for them on the sprue, works perfectly for them on the sprue, makes a good looking model, but good luck trying to paint it. You know what I mean? That's the guy on the horse in the spearhead for Cities of Sigmar. He's sitting on the horse, and then the back of the saddle has a big like a flagpole coming up, and then there's a flag which is, instead of going backwards like as he's moving forward, it's like the wind is hitting him from behind, and so the flag is going over his head. So I was like, all right, so how do I paint the guy separate from the horse? If I do that, I have to try to get him in underneath the flag, turn his body, get him down into the saddle and seated. So I'm like, well, I'll just leave the flag off. Well, you can't. The flag is attached to this piece that's directly behind the saddle, and then it's like a bedroll, and then there are two sides of the bedroll that go on from the side that are attached to the saddlebags that are on the horse's kind of butt and everything like that. And then there's this extra hammer the guy must just carry that he's just got sort of stuck back there, that there's like a spot to glue it in. So yeah, it's like a puzzle piece, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it's annoying. So yeah, that I wish that they would stop that. I usually dry brush some light silver over color armor, or wash a metallic silver with a watered down contrast. There's also metallic mediums you can get too, which will also give it a bit of that kind of thing. I heard the reason they skipped Windows 9 was because there were so many references to Windows 95 and 98 still in the code that it would cause issues. I think I'd heard that it was because there was a lot of Windows 9X in the code, meaning it was going to hit Windows 95 or 98. And then when they got to the time when it was like, what about Windows 9? And they'd be like, oh, crap, that's also going to trigger it. Yeah, that could be a possibility. Like, I don't know why they stopped doing the dates. I suppose because if they wanted to go longer, like if you think about it, technically Windows 10 came out in what, like 2018, maybe 2019? I forget exactly when it came out. Maybe earlier. So at this day and age, if you're like, hey, would you want to order your new machine with the Windows 2017, and you're like, isn't it 2024? But from what I understand, a lot of people don't seem interested in upgrading to Windows 11, and other people can't because there's some sort of weird security thing. I don't know. I'm mostly using Macs now, so I'm relatively happy with that. Even GW goes ape with adding heads for their sprues. 8 models and 7,000 heads. Sometimes. Any experience with epic scale kit bashing? The Lit Bashing channel has been really cool to watch. They make smaller scale versions of Horus Heresy characters. I've never done any epic scale stuff. Kit bashed some Horus Heresy Deathwing companions from the old 6th edition Dark Angels veterans and older Horus Heresy plastics. Good fun. Well, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Jim Crimmins, how you doing? A well-written program doing a version check would actually see a version number of da-da-da-da, and when it's in and the explanation doesn't seem to hold water. Yeah, I'm not a programmer, so I'm like, if that's the way they wrote it, that seems weird. But, you know. Good morning from Waterford, Wisconsin. Sunny and gorgeous. Smoking a nice cigar and enjoying the stream. One goal I have is to meet you in real life someday. Well, there's always the Tabletop Minions Expo, which usually happens in early June. Or otherwise, any convention that, well, not any convention, but AdeptCon. I'll be at Gen Con, and not this week, but the next week I'll be in Gen Con. So that's going to screw up the Every Other Sunday show a little bit, by the way. So I got to figure that out. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I'm going to do 2 in a row so that it's, or just, well, maybe I'll just wait until after I get back from Gen Con. But yeah, I can't really do the Every Other Sunday show from Gen Con because, well, A, hotel internet, which is always sort of sketchy, and B, I'd have to bring a bunch of stuff, and it's just not a thing. So, but yeah, I'll be leaving not this upcoming Wednesday, but the next Wednesday. The 31st of July is the day that we leave, and then I'll be at Gen Con. So if you'll be at Gen Con, hopefully we'll bump into each other at some point. I'm thinking along the lines of, say, kit bashing, 1/35th scale Merkava. I don't know what that is. Number 9 is considered unlucky to some in Japan. When pronounced, it sounds similar to the word that means torture, although this meaning might not be widespread. Oh, geez. I remember when I painted Rabute Guliman as a blood angel. Oh, the heresy. Sure. Who says cats are boring pets? I don't know. It's a good question. Anyone have any experience reposing Morbidite to make them look varied in multiple... I don't know what a Morbidite is. Maybe I need more turnips in my 28. I mean, it could be. Picked up Marvel Zombie Sinister 6 on Prime Day sale the other day. Can't wait to paint those things up. Cool. Good morning from New York. Working on some Ghost Archipelago Lustria table terrain. Enjoying the Sunday ritual of your live stream. All the best. Well, absolutely, Matt. Redemptionists? Is that it? Might be it. Oh, I've gone way too far back. No, I haven't gone. Come on. Orlok. That's what it is. It's Orlok and Caudor. For some reason, I can only remember one of those words. I don't know why. But I had to look it up. Yeah, I don't know why. Goobertown Head did a great video about the difference a simple arm, head, or weapon change can make to a squad. I reposed some arms and a couple Blood Bowl humans. Really like the result. Oh yeah, when you have monopose miniatures and they've not given you enough for variation, then you have to start to get creative, and it can be a bit of work, but it can definitely help for sure. Marvel Crisis Protocol kinds of makes me wish that there was a war game based on cities of heroes or cities of villains, model agnostic superheroes, and underserved genre. Yeah. I enjoy kit bashing because it's kind of like that scene from Apollo 13 where they have to fix the air purifier. I pull a bunch of bits out and say, how do I make this look like a hex mark? Sure, exactly. Bought the Orlok Arms Masters on the basis of the 2 cool Cyber Hounds included. The dude with the big hammer and exoskeleton is pretty cool too. Yeah. Like I said, I haven't come across any of the like normal size boxes of Necromunda miniatures where I haven't gone, yeah, I can use that. Now, that said, a lot of these single like clamshell boxes where they put like a weird random like resin guy in there, most of those I can't stand. Most of those are just like, when am I ever going to use that model for anything? It's just like a fancy lady, like a baroness or something like that. It's like almost like sideline characters and things like that. And I see those and I'm just like, I'm not going to pick that up. Sometimes they get sent to me, but conversions are great when you're dealing with multiple delicate sprues. Not my human receivers, but now my human receivers have different poses and will be easier to tell apart. That does help a bunch too. Curious about your opinion on the recent GW quote in the MetaWatch article regarding legends in casual matched play. I didn't read all of that. I skimmed it, but the concept of casual matched play is so weird. Like they've gone down a really weird road of just like, they used to ignore matched play or tournament play or competitive play so much, and they have switched so 180, at least as far as the, I hate to say news output, but at least the content output that they put out for like their, like they talk about, MetaWatch and things like that a good deal on the website. And I think Ash and I had a conversation about this at his place, his office, when I was there in Canada back in the early May. I think that a big portion of it is that it gets them more engagement when they talk about that stuff. When they talk about like, well, here's the meta, this is the best army, that pulls in more views than when they just go, hey, look, we're advertising this new thing that we're putting out. You know what I mean? And so when they look at the numbers, I'm sure that there are managers that are like, more of this gets more eyeballs, with the belief that more eyeballs necessarily translates into more sales. I'm sure to some degree it does, but then you get stuff like casual match play and you're like, what? Just stop it. Yeah. Again, I very, very, very much believe that they should have 2 versions of the rules. I think there should be tournament rules and there should be rules for people who want to have a good time, which is me adding my own flavor to it. But yeah, there should be casual and there should be tournament rules. There should be separate rule sets. Yeah. But they're never going to do that. So that's cool. Have you ever heard of Revelation Skirmish? It's a fun little combined arms infantry mechs games. No, I haven't heard of that. From a studio perspective, Warhammer Legends should be considered legal in all casual match play games throughout the entire edition, whether they be games with your friends or at your local club. So they're basically telling you, you can do what you want. We're not going to come to your house and beat you up, which everybody should know. Like the fact that they need to tell people, oh, by the way, we can't stop you from doing whatever you want is stupid. Like they shouldn't have to say that, but they do. It should be, in my opinion, taken the other way around. Like, legends are always legal unless you're playing in a tournament, then they're not. How about that? Just like I don't know. Peachy's going to teach a class on kitbashing next weekend at Griffin Con. Looking forward to it. Oh, that's cool. Necromunda kitbashing going to save you $50 to $100 from a Forge World resin cast. Well, yeah, that's true. You need to get back to building houses for the Summon Lesser Maker July Build Challenge. We're using the Warhammer Fantasy Warhammer Fantasy building templates from old White Dwarf issues as an inspiration to make new stuff. Well, that's very cool. Fun and creative. Never been a kit basher, but I'm starting an orc army. I figured it's time. Oh, if you're starting an orc army, you'll probably end up doing some kit bashing for sure. Malev, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Adobe is responding to the video game industry's demand, more AI in the pipeline. Let's see here. Nice thing about the kit bashing is that if you're not happy with it, you can always keep chopping, try something different. You almost never really ruin something. And again, like I said earlier, if you get yourself some poster putty, you can always dry fit it all together and look at it and go, yeah, that doesn't work. And then you go back and tweak it because you're just using poster putty to stick stuff together so you can at least get an eyeball on it. You know what I mean? Warhammer Plus Mini should be available August 31st. Huh. Greetings from sunny Poland. How you doing? Plastic yard signs for rent, garage sales are a good replacement for polystyrene sheets. Oh yeah, no, I've gone to hobby places and bought like, for sale signs and like that kind of those like companies that like hardware stores that sell those signs. Those are because it's way cheap. Like if you did the same thing, but it was like, oh, it's for the hobby. Well, then it's going to cost 2 or 3 times as much. But if it's a sign that someone's going to stick out on their land to say private property, they're not going to pay hobby prices for that stuff, and it's kind of the same stuff. Have you tried In Country, Modern Elite Forces squad game? Saw it at con, but I can't try it out. I haven't, and I'm not usually into like historical / modern stuff. You know what I mean? Like if it's modern, but there was also Cthulhu's in it or something like that, or like cultists or whatever, you'd be like, okay, cool. Like like Majestic 13 is kind of modern, but then there's also aliens in it. But if it's just like normal modern military private contractors versus insurgents and stuff like that, my neighbor across the street fought in Iraq, and I don't want to make a game out of that, I guess. So yeah, that's for me. That's just me. I don't begrudge somebody else who wants to play differently. It's one of the things I like about Blackout is it has some of those sensibilities, but it's like 100 some plus years in the future or whatever, on a different planet. Use green stuff or milliput to make them look like they are knee deep in the snow or swamp or garbage. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Orlok Gang is a great kit. Oh yeah, Orlok and Kodor, I think, are both great kits. All, like I said, pretty much all the base kits from. I'm not a huge Corpse Grinder fan. Like, they're hard to kit bash to make them look like anything but corpse grinders, at least to me. My favorite FLGS loves stocking the North Star stuff, but you have to order from them directly, so it can take a while to get them restocked. Yeah, I didn't think North Star was in distribution. I wish that they were, though. Our cat Dexter was out on our 1-up window ledge and suddenly decided to run down the wall to the ground floor. I didn't move so fast to run downstairs to see if he was okay. Oh, yeah. Bought the cards in the book for Majestic 13. Got tracking for the cards. On average, how long does the printing take for the book? I know it's out of your hands. Just wondering. Generally, it kind of depends. It's usually a week. Well, production doesn't. It depends. It's a week to 2 weeks max, usually. And then depending on how you shipped it, like sometimes the shipping can be slow if you went with like media mail, which is fine, but it'll get there. And sometimes it'll come faster than you think, strangely. When Rain and Hell came out, I kit bashed 3 teams for my friends who have never played a tabletop war game, and each picked a theme, and I made it a reality. One was Silent Hill, one was Manborg, and one was Magic the Gathering based. Nice. That's very cool. It was so much fun kit bashing it all together. Absolutely. That's very cool. I've done a good bit of reposing in Blender. Yeah, I think remember you mentioning that. Yep. Let's see here. When you put the bones in to do the posing, it weights the mesh so that the repose should still look pretty natural. Nice. Uncle Drippy. Yep, that's what I was talking about. It's very encouraging with the arcane journals for Old World to see that they include many new variant units that require kit bashing. This is GW official and would never happen in 40K these days. I have used stuff like Blender to cut up models, print, and kit bash after the fact, like bodies but no heads, bodies cut in half at the waist. Oh yeah, that makes sense. So if you're just like, I want to kit bash this, but I don't want to print the whole thing and then just cut off the legs because I'm going to put them on these different legs, then just get rid of those parts and just print the parts you want. That makes total sense. I still struggle switching heads. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like the head thing is probably one of the easiest ways to start in kit bashing for sure. Just changing the heads around. Would be a shame to quash Death Watch if the rumors are to be believed. Major moneymaker for Games Workshop and the amount of kit bashing possible. I haven't heard anything about Death Watch going away. If anyone should go away, it should be Custodes, because they're not really, like, they shouldn't be an army. You know what I mean? Like, they're basically, anyway. Yeah, if you were to ask me, I would say Custodes should go away before Death Watch. But if Death Watch aren't selling, that's why they would be going away. Models for the Thundar characters for 3D printing can be easily found online. Sure. I thought Spearhead was one of Artie Conleaf's best World War II rules. I'm not familiar with that either. I mean, Spearhead nowadays that's what they call it's basically combat patrol, but for Age of Sigmar, right? What are the chances of getting some TM branded Snuggies in the merch store? I haven't seen any place that prints that stuff, so that's a good question. I find it hard to get into chipping and weathering. Chipping, I'm a little bit, well, it depends. Sometimes I like chipping. I like to use a sponge for chipping, or a piece of foam, but weathering I enjoy quite a bit. Maybe it's not the cats, but your lap. Well, I thought that, but the in-laws, my wife's parents, they got a new cat. They always get senior cats, older cats. And so they got this new guy, and his name is Mr. Midnight. He's black, strangely enough. And he likes sitting in my lap just fine when we go over there for lunch. So I don't think it's my lap. I don't know. Maybe it is. The miniature group for teens that runs the library let the kids kitbash stuff using donated bits from dozen ranges. The game setting is very timey-wimey, post-apocalyptic to explain that variety. Sure, absolutely. Cat hunts my feet daily. That's always a problem. Good morning from West Hampstead, New York, working on jungle terrain for Ghost Archipelago, Lustria Mordheim. Love hobbying to the show every Sunday. Keep up the great work. Well, it's not every Sunday, it's every other Sunday, but yes. On the kit bashing front, Station Forge STLs come in parts for a bunch of their sculpts, great for digital or physical kit bashing. Nice. What's the Muskegon Ferry like? I don't know. I've never been on it. I think it's not cheap. I've heard that. Hello, one and all. I guess I'll have to watch this from the start to find out what the topic of the day. We're kind of talking about kit bashing, talking about how it's fun to do and not hard. Have been busy grilling some burgers and eating them. I grilled burgers last night, and they were lovely. I made them myself. Like normally, I just go up to the deli counter, and I'm just like, yeah, 2 of those burgers, and then they put them in the butcher paper and all that kind of stuff. But there was a big line, and nothing was on sale. And then I saw over here there was just like X amount of ground beef for $5 kind of on sale. So I was just like, I'll make my own burgers at home, and they were really good. So there's that. Well, folks, it's 11 o'clock in my neck of the woods, so I got to get my stuff together. And speaking of the in-laws and possibly cat on lap, we'll be heading over there for lunch. So thanks to everybody who came by. If you haven't done any kit bashing before, maybe just try a head swap. You're building something, put a different head on there, see what you think about it. You don't even have to glue it on there. You can just rest it in there and kind of look at it. Maybe put a little tiny piece of poster putty in there so it doesn't fall on the floor and go underneath your desk or whatever. But just kind of mess with it and see what you think. And then maybe that'll open up some new possibilities for your modeling in the future and allow you to do, I don't know, increase your creativity as you enjoy it. So thanks again to everybody, and thanks for coming by and hanging out and chatting. And we'll see you folks again. Like I said, it probably won't be 2 weeks. So it'll either be I'll do another Sunday show just next week, or more likely than that, I will actually wait until I get back from Gen Con, because then I'll have news about Gen Con. So that'll be a lot of fun. So, and if you're going to Gen Con, I hope I see you there. Come up and say hi. So that's pretty much about it. Thanks to everybody for coming by and hanging out, and thanks for watching.